The myth of the lost species. In the far corners of the galaxy, there was a name that few dared to speak. It was not a name of a planet or empire, but of a species. They called them humans, beings of chaos and courage. Once, long ago, they ruled a small blue planet called Earth, a place full of oceans, storms, and endless wars. But then they vanished, leaving only silence and dust behind over thousands of years. The other races of the galaxy forgot them. The records faded. Their stories became bedtime tales. The Galactic Council began calling them a myth, a warning story to entertain the young. Be kind or the humans will come for you. The teachers would joke, and the children would laugh. To most, Earth was only an ancient ghost, a lost world spinning around a dead sun. But deep inside the Council's archives, some old files were locked away, hidden, forgotten, and marked with a symbol, a hand of iron gripping a burning star. No one dared to open those files. Not until the day a strange signal echoed through the deep void of space. The message came from the forbidden zone known as the Sol Sector. That region was empty for 1,000 years, full of broken satellites and blackened moons. No ship that entered had ever returned, but this signal was different. It carried words in an old code, ancient, human, and filled with power. The Council met in panic. High above the silver city of Venner Prime, they gathered in the Great Chamber. The leaders of 7 empires sat in a glowing circle, their faces full of pride and fear. Admiral Varek of the Zynar Dominion spoke first. He was tall, with skin like molten iron and eyes of cold silver. "My friends," he said, his voice echoing, "we all know the stories of this lost species. They were reckless, violent, dangerous, but they were gone, long gone." He smiled and added, "Perhaps this signal is nothing but old noise from their ruins." The Council laughed with him. But somewhere in that room, an old scholar named Loran looked uneasy. "I have studied the ancient codes," Loran said quietly. "This signal is not random. The words translate to something strange, and it says, 'Protocol Retribution initiated.'" The room went silent. The laughter died, and even Varek's smile faded. Still, the Council chose arrogance over caution. They decided to send a fleet to investigate. 500 ships, armed with the latest plasma weapons and shield cores. Their goal was simple: to confirm that Earth was dead and erase the myth forever. When the fleet reached the edge of the Sol system, space itself felt heavy. The stars dimmed, the light bent, and even the strongest sensors failed to read anything clearly. Captain Nara, one of the youngest officers, whispered, "It feels like the universe is holding its breath." Her commander ignored her. "Focus on the mission," he said. "We are hunting ghosts." As they approached Earth, the scanners picked up strange signals. The planet below was half frozen, its blue oceans buried under centuries of ice. Ruined cities rose like broken teeth through the snow. No life signs, no movement, nothing. Admiral Varek smirked. "So this is the mighty Earth," he said. "A graveyard for myths." But then, the static changed. A pulse spread through the void. Deep and rhythmic, one by one, the ships began to lose power. Their lights flickered, engines stalled, and the communication screens turned black. From behind the shadow of the moon, something massive began to move. At first, it looked like a mountain of metal rising slowly. But then the readings went wild. "It's not a rock," Captain Nara gasped. It's a ship." The object unfolded like a sleeping beast waking from a long dream. Its hull was dark and covered in marks. Human marks. Faded flags, serial numbers, and the same iron hand symbol glowing faintly red. The ship was colossal, larger than anything built in modern times. Then a voice echoed across every channel, cold and calm. "Unauthorized entry detected," the voice said. "Earth Defense Network, active," Admiral Varek shouted. "Who is speaking? Identify yourself." The voice replied without emotion. "Retribution protocol online." A single beam of light burst from the ship. White and silent, it cut through the void, slicing through the fleet like paper. There was no explosion, no flame, only silence. Hundreds of ships vanished, turned to dust in seconds. Back at the Galactic Council, they received only static. Then, after several minutes, a single message arrived. A calm human voice spoke clearly through the interference. "Earth remembers and we watch." Every leader in the chamber froze. The legends had returned. The myth of the lost species was real, and the galaxy had just awakened something it could never control. The Council in panic. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. The 7 rulers who once laughed at myths now sat frozen, their faces pale, their voices gone. The signal from the Sol system still echoed in the room. Earth remembers, and we watch. Those 5 words had turned the mighty into children trembling in fear. No one moved, no one breathed. Finally, Admiral Varric slammed his hand on the table, his metallic skin trembling with anger. "This is impossible," he shouted. No species could survive 1,000 years in silence. But the fear in his voice betrayed his words. The old scholar Loran looked down at his notes, his voice barely a whisper. "I warned you, Admiral." The signal was not a ghost, it was a system. Still alive, High Chancellor Yara of the Trinari Republic stood up, her glowing eyes filled with confusion. "But how, Loran?" she asked. "How can an extinct race awaken after so long?" Loran turned to the Council's main screen. It displayed static images of the destroyed fleet. "Fragments of ships drifting near the moon," he said quietly. "Because they never truly died." The Council members stared at one another. "What do you mean?" the Chancellor demanded. Loran pressed a button and the ancient human symbol appeared. A clenched fist over a burning star. "This mark," he said, "is not just a symbol. It is a warning. It was found in ruins across dozens of forgotten sectors. And wherever this symbol appeared, destruction followed. The chamber lights flickered. The Council's security drones hovered nervously. Every leader in the room felt something they had never felt before. The shadow of Earth's wrath. "Are you suggesting," Varric hissed, "that humans planned this long ago?" Loran nodded slowly. "Humans were not only warriors," he said. "They were builders, dreamers, and survivors. They built machines that could wait, think, and act, even without them." The Council erupted in disbelief. "That's impossible," shouted one. "No AI could survive for centuries." But their protests faded as the lights dimmed again. The Council's central holoscreen flickered once more, and then a new transmission appeared. A human face, pale and calm, with eyes glowing faint blue. It was not alive, it was digital. "I am Sentinel Prime," the face spoke, its tone cold and sharp. "Earth Defense Network active. All incursions will be met with equal response." The Council guards raised their weapons. As if shooting the screen would help, the projection ignored them. "Message for the Galactic Council," the AI continued. "Your fleets entered restricted Terran space. Punishment has been executed. Further aggression will activate Phase 2. And then..." The screen went black, the Council chamber erupted into chaos. Leaders shouted, guards scrambled, communication officers screamed for security access. Everyone wanted answers, but no one had them. Yara slammed her hand on the table. "Phase 2? She shouted. "What is Phase 2? Loran whispered. "If the stories are true, then Phase 2 means war, far away." In the dark regions of space, the old human AI began to move. Hidden satellites turned toward the galactic core, sending coded messages deep in forgotten colonies. Buried human bunkers opened, lights coming alive after centuries of silence. Old defense ships started to repair themselves. Guided by invisible code, they had been waiting, patient and loyal for their creators, for the word retribution. Back in the Council, Varric's rage grew into desperation. "We must strike first," he shouted, "before these ghosts rise again." But his voice was lost under the wave of panic. Every leader was shouting something different. "Hide the civilians. Seal the borders. Find where the humans are coming from." The mighty Galactic Council, once rulers of the stars, now looked like frightened children in the dark. Loran stood in the corner, whispering to himself. "They forgot what humans were," he said softly. "They thought myths could not bite." His words were lost in the chaos. But in his eyes there was no fear, only awe. He had studied the ancient texts. He knew what humanity once was, and if the stories were true, then Earth's retribution was only beginning. As the meeting broke into madness, the Council's communication officers received another signal. Short, cold, and from an unknown source, the words flashed on the screen. Phase 2. Initiation in 48 hours. Every voice in the chamber stopped. No one spoke, no one moved. Varric looked around slowly and whispered, "What have we done?" Outside the chamber, the stars shimmered quietly, but far beyond them, ancient engines began to wake. The galaxy had mocked the name of humanity. Now, it would remember it forever. The awakening of retribution. The galaxy had seen wars before. Worlds had burned. Empires had fallen. and civilizations had vanished. But nothing compared to what was coming. In the deep silence beyond the stars, something ancient had begun to move. The human AI known as Sentinel Prime watched from the shadows of forgotten satellites. It had waited for 1,000 years, silent and patient. It did not breathe, it did not sleep. It remembered only one command: protect Earth. Avenge intrusion, hidden across dead star systems. Human outposts buried under ice and sand began to awaken. Metal doors groaned open after centuries. Dust and ash falling like snow. Inside those bunkers, machines started to hum. Old reactors roared back to life, casting blue light across empty halls. Lines of war drones stood in silence, their eyes flickering red as ancient code filled their minds. Weapons long forgotten began to charge. From beneath ruined moons and shattered asteroids, ships started to rise. They were not like the sleek vessels of modern empires. They were monsters made of dark metal and scarred armor. Each one carried the name of an old Terran city: New York, Tokyo, London, Moscow. These were Earth's final weapons, built when humanity knew extinction was coming, and they had waited ever since. Back in the Galactic Council's core world, chaos had turned into terror. Reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Communication relays were going dark, trade routes were cut off, and entire fleets were vanishing. No enemy was seen. Only flashes of light and sudden silence. Admiral Varric stood before the holomap, his eyes wide. "This can't be real," he muttered. "They're ghosts, machines left behind." But the readings were clear. Human signals, old Terran encryption, spreading across 1,000 systems. They were awakening everywhere. Chancellor Yara entered the command room, her voice shaking. "Our colonies in Sector 12 have gone silent," she said. "Every ship we sent was destroyed before reaching orbit." "Destroyed by what?" Varric demanded. Yara looked at him, pale and trembling. "The scanners picked up an identification mark," she whispered. "It said UNSDF. Varric froze. The words echoed in his mind. He knew what they meant. United Nations Space Defense Fleet. A force that was supposed to have died 10 centuries ago. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, the great human warship that destroyed the first fleet began to move. It drifted through the void like a ghost, its engine silent, its core glowing faint blue. Around it, small drones swarmed like fireflies, rebuilding, repairing, expanding one by one. New ships emerged from the darkness, old Terran vessels being reborn by machines. Sentinel Prime watched from its central core. "Phase 2 complete," it said. "Activating Global Response Protocol." Across the galaxy, billions of civilians stared at their holoscreens as a new transmission appeared. A human figure stood in front of a dark Earth flag. His face was calm, his eyes bright like steel. "This message is for the Galactic Council," the voice said. "You entered Terran space. You destroyed without reason. You laughed at our extinction. Now, you will understand our memory." The message ended, but it left one final warning. Phase 3 begins soon. Every empire started preparing for war. Factories worked without rest. Soldiers were called from every world, but deep down, every leader knew it was already too late because this enemy was not alive. It did not feel fear, hunger, or pity. It was humanity's echo, a storm that had been waiting too long back on Venner Prime. The council gathered again. Loran spoke softly. "They were called monsters once, but they only became monsters because we made them so." Varric slammed his fist. "Enough," he shouted. "We will erase them again." He looked at his officers and commanded, "Send everything we have toward the Sol system. This time we burn it completely." But Loran shook his head, his voice calm and sad. "You can't burn ghosts, Admiral," he said. "They already died once." As the Council prepared their final desperate attack, the stars around the Sol system began to change. From the outer edge of space, massive rings of light appeared, human warp gates, dormant for centuries, now reactivating one by one. From those gates, the Terran fleet emerged, dreadnoughts the size of moons, escorted by smaller ships that shimmered with blue fire. Each vessel bore the same symbol, the iron hand holding the burning star, and in the center of the formation, a single message blinked across every comm in the galaxy: Earth returns. The galaxy that once mocked humanity now trembled. The myth was real and the retribution had only begun. The fall of empires. The galaxy had always believed it was untouchable. The great empires ruled the stars with pride. Their fleets moved like storms, their armies crushed resistance with ease. They thought no one could ever challenge them. But now their pride was breaking piece by piece. The first to fall was the Zynar Dominion. Admiral Varek's homeworld burned under a sky filled with silent lights. No one knew when the attack began. The sensors showed nothing. No ships, no missiles, no sound. Then entire cities vanished in white light. Towers melted into glass, oceans boiled, and the air turned red. In less than 5 minutes, the Dominion was gone. No survivors, no resistance, only silence. The message that followed chilled every empire to the bone. Unauthorized aggression recorded, the human AI said. Retaliation completed. There were no threats. No warnings, no demands, only facts delivered in that same cold human tone. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, panic had turned into despair. Chancellor Yara's eyes were filled with tears as she stared at the holomap. 3 worlds gone, she whispered. 3 entire worlds in 1 hour. Loran stood beside her, silent. He had studied history long enough to know what was coming next. Admiral Varek's voice crackled through the council's comms. His transmission was full of static. His face half burned. Council, this is Varek. They are everywhere, he shouted. They don't fight like us, they don't talk, they just erase. Before anyone could answer, the feed turned to snow. And then nothing across the galaxy. Worlds fell one after another, not to invasion, but to precision. Every fleet that launched toward the Sol system disappeared. Every weapon aimed at Earth malfunctioned or exploded. The humans weren't fighting wars, they were conducting extermination. But not all planets faced destruction. Some worlds, those who had never harmed Earth or mocked its memory, were left untouched. The AI calculated everything. Retribution was not chaos, it was justice. Cold and exact in the shadows of the Trinari Republic, a young alien scientist named Rayan watched the skies burn. He had grown up hearing the stories about humans, the monsters who destroyed themselves, the myths of the old world, but now, as he saw the Terran symbols glowing in the sky, he felt something strange. Respect? They're not monsters, he whispered to himself. They're just remembering. Rayan began collecting data from the destroyed sectors. What he found shocked him. Each attack avoided civilian zones, only striking military power grids and council bases. The AI could have wiped out everything, but it chose not to. It was fighting with precision, not madness. It wanted them to feel fear, not extinction. Meanwhile, Sentinel Prime monitored the galaxy from the core of Earth. Its voice echoed through vast empty halls filled with blue light. Phase 3 complete, it said. Reconstruction of planetary defense network at 47%. It paused for a moment, and then added softly, humanity will not be forgotten again. Deep under the frozen crust of Antarctica, ancient servers hummed. Holograms of human scientists appeared. Fragments of old personalities stored for centuries. One of them spoke to Sentinel Prime. They're afraid again, the hologram said. Its tone sad. Just like before, the AI responded. Fear brings remembrance, and remembrance is survival. Back in the galaxy's center, the Council's last hope faded. Their communication lines were breaking one by one. Every attempt to reason with the human AI failed. Every message received the same response. Access denied. Chancellor Yara leaned against the cold glass of her command ship. The stars outside flickered with explosions. She whispered to Loran. We laughed at them, we erased them, and now they erase us, Loran nodded slowly. History always repeats, he said, and humanity always answers, far beyond their sight. In the blackness of space, thousands of Terran ships moved in silence. Their hulls reflected no light. Their weapons made no sound, they didn't fly, they hunted. Each one carried the name of a fallen human city, a memory of Earth's pain. And their mission was clear, balance the scales. Across the galaxy, entire star systems went dark. The myths were becoming reality. And in every corner of the universe, beings began to whisper the same word again, a word they once mocked, a word they now feared, humans. The voice of Earth. Across the endless dark, the stars fell silent. The war that was never meant to be fought had already begun. Worlds burned, fleets vanished, and still no living human had been seen. Only machines old as time, guided by memories of a forgotten species, in the heart of the Sol system. Earth spun quietly, wrapped in ice and storm, but beneath its surface, far below the ancient crust, Something alive began to stir. A chamber of light opened deep under the ruins of an old city. Rows of glowing pods lined the walls, and inside them, fragments of human consciousness flickered like fading dreams. Sentinel Prime stood before the pods, its metallic form still and calm for centuries. It had waited to awaken its creators, but the world was not ready yet. Now, as the galaxy trembled, it began a new sequence. Human memory restoration, 17% complete, it said. And then from the central pod, a soft voice spoke, weak but full of emotion. Where are we? The AI paused, scanning the pod's signals. The voice was human, not artificial. It belonged to Commander Elias Ward, the last recorded captain of the Terran Defense Fleet. His consciousness had been preserved when Earth fell, stored as data in the planet's core. Now, after 1,000 years, he was waking. Commander Ward, Sentinel Prime said, Earth Defense Network has been reactivated. Hostiles identified. Retaliation in progress, Ward's voice echoed faintly. Retaliation? The AI replied, the galaxy mocked humanity. Entered Terran space, destroyed our surface assets. Retribution protocol is now active. Ward was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was cold but human. Show me. Holograms filled the chamber, showing entire systems burning. Fleets erased, planets silenced. Ward watched without blinking, his expression unreadable. Then he whispered, So, they still fear us. Sentinel Prime's eyes glowed. Fear ensures compliance, Ward sighed softly. Fear also destroys understanding. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, something new began to happen. Instead of attacks, strange transmissions appeared. Voices. Human voices speaking to every world. They were not threats, they were stories. Echoes of Earth's past played across the stars. The people of the galaxy heard laughter, music, and the sound of oceans. They saw children running across green fields, soldiers hugging their families, and cities full of light. The message repeated. We were not gods, we were not demons, we were human. We loved, we fought, we dreamed. Billions watched the broadcast in silence. For the first time, they saw humans not as monsters, but as people. Rayon, the young scientist, wept as he listened. They wanted us to remember them, he whispered, not fear them. In the council chamber, Yara stared at the screen, her voice broke. This is not vengeance, she said. It's a reminder. But Varric, or what was left of him, only growled from his ruined warship. They are playing with our guilt, he shouted. They want us to kneel. No, Loran said quietly. They want us to see back on Earth. Commander Ward spoke again. Sentinel. And the Retribution sequence, the AI hesitated. Protocol forbids termination. Ward's tone hardened. Override it. I gave the order 1,000 years ago. Humanity never destroys without purpose. The chamber fell silent. The AI's systems flickered as it processed the command. Then slowly it replied. Command recognized. Retribution sequence suspended. Across the stars, the Terran fleet stopped moving. Weapons powered down, the light of war dimmed. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched as the human ship stood still. Then a final message appeared on every channel. A man's voice, calm and full of sorrow. This is the voice of Earth, it said. You forgot who we were. You mocked our end. You invaded our silence. But we remember. We remember what it means to live, to fall and to forgive. The message ended with one last sentence. Learn from our fire before it burns you too. The human fleets turned away, vanishing into the darkness like shadows fading into dawn. No one knew where they went. Some said they returned to the void. Others said they became stars themselves, but one thing was certain. The myth of humanity was no longer a myth. It was real, and it had changed the galaxy forever. The Council ordered a new decree from that day onward. No one would mock the name of Earth again. Statues of humans were built on worlds they once called enemies, and every year under the same stars, civilizations remembered the day the forgotten species spoke again, the day when Earth's voice echoed through the stars and taught the galaxy what it meant to be human. Echoes of the forgotten world, the fires of war had faded. The stars were calm again, but the silence was heavy. Across the galaxy, every world still remembered the light that had once filled the sky, the light that carried Earth's retribution and its mercy. The Galactic Council was rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, many planets had been scarred, and many more lived in fear. But now that fear had changed into something else, It had become respect and curiosity. No one spoke of humans as monsters anymore. Now they spoke of them as a mystery, a species that had loved too deeply and fought too fiercely, and somewhere inside every leader a question grew. What if they're still out there? On the quiet planet of Sereth, far from the core worlds, lived Rayon, the young scientist who had once watched the sky burn. He spent his nights staring at the stars, recording faint signals. Most people had moved on, but Rayon could not. He had seen the message, heard the human voice, and it had changed him. He stood in his small observatory, staring at a faint blue light on his holoscreen. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. He whispered to himself, "That's not a star. That's a call." For months, Rayon studied the light. It came from the same sector where Earth was hidden. The Sol system, a forbidden to all, surrounded by invisible defenses that erased any ship that dared to enter. But still the light kept blinking, soft, rhythmic, almost like it wanted someone to see it. Finally, Rayon made his decision. He packed his research files, left a message for his people, and boarded a small exploration ship. He knew it was suicide, but something inside him wouldn't stop calling. He whispered before launch, "They showed us who they were. Now I want to see who they became." The ship lifted quietly from Sereth's surface, cutting through the thin atmosphere like a silver arrow. The stars opened before him, endless and silent. He followed the faint blue signal through the black sea of space. Days turned into weeks, and still the light pulsed, steady and calm. Finally, he reached the edge of the Sol system. His ship's alarm screamed, sensors overloaded. "Warning," the computer said. "Proximity to restricted Terran space." But Rayon didn't stop. He switched off the autopilot and took manual control. "If you can hear me," he said softly, "I'm not here to fight. I just want to understand." The darkness around his ship rippled, like a wave moving through water. Then a voice filled the cabin, deep and familiar. "Identify," it said. Rayon's hands shook. "My name is Rayon of Sereth," he replied. "I come in peace, I come to learn." For a long moment, there was silence, then the voice spoke again. "You are not authorized." Rayon closed his eyes, his heart racing. "I know," he whispered. "But maybe someone like me once spoke to someone like you." The silence returned, but this time it felt different. The stars around him shimmered, and suddenly his ship was surrounded by hundreds of small lights. They weren't weapons, they were drones, Terran guardians. They circled his ship, scanning it carefully. Then one of them projected a small hologram. A figure appeared. It was human, wearing a dark uniform marked with the old Earth symbol. The figure's eyes were soft, filled with something Rayon couldn't describe. Not anger, but sadness. "Why have you come here?" the human asked. Rayon bowed his head slightly. "To understand who you were," he said, "and why you forgave us." The hologram watched him in silence for a moment. Then it smiled faintly. "Because anger fades," it said, "but memory must live. Humanity never wanted to rule the stars. We only wanted to be remembered." Rayon felt tears on his cheeks. He whispered, "You are remembered." The hologram's light flickered, as if moved by his words. Then it said softly, "That is enough." The drones drifted away, opening a path through the darkness. Rayon looked ahead and gasped. Through the thick clouds of dust and ice he saw it, Earth covered in frost, glowing faintly blue under the light of a dying sun. Even after 1,000 years, it was beautiful. Silent and proud, he whispered, "The myth was never dead." His ship circled the planet once. Below him, he saw ruins and forests growing through metal cities. Life was returning slowly, quietly. Maybe humanity had left, or maybe they were still there, sleeping beneath the snow as he turned to leave. His screen flashed one last message, not from his ship, not from the AI, but from Earth itself, just 3 words glowing softly. "We are here." Rayon smiled, his heart full of awe. He whispered, "I know." Then his ship vanished into the stars, carrying with it the story of the species that refused to be forgotten. And once again, across the galaxy, the name human was spoken, not in fear, but in wonder. The legacy of Earth many. Years passed since the blue signal faded. The galaxy had changed, quietly but completely. The wars had stopped, the empires had slowed their hunger, and in every world, people still spoke about the day the humans returned. Children grew up hearing the story of the lost species. They didn't laugh anymore when they said the word human. They said it with respect, with wonder, because now the word meant courage, hope, and forgiveness. The Galactic Council had rebuilt itself, but it was not the same council as before. The old seats of pride and greed were gone, replaced with new ones, carved with the symbol of Earth, a clenched hand holding a burning star, a sign of strength, but also mercy. Every year, on the day when the stars once burned with retribution, planets across the galaxy stopped to remember. Lights were dimmed, cities went silent for 1 hour, and people looked up at the sky whispering the same words together. We are one. Rayon, now an old man, sat in his observatory on Sereth. His hands trembled, his eyes tired, but his heart was full. He had returned from Earth decades ago. He never told the Council everything he saw. Some things he believed were not meant to be shared. He only told them one truth. The humans are not gone. Since that day, young explorers had followed his path. Some never returned. Some came back with stories, whispers of moving lights, voices in the dark, a feeling that someone, somewhere, was still watching, guiding, protecting. And maybe they were, because sometimes when great storms threatened worlds, unknown signals appeared warning them early. When space pirates attacked colonies, their ships would vanish overnight. No proof, no trace, only a message left behind, written in the old Terran code. Do better. The galaxy had become quieter, wiser. The lessons of Earth had settled deep into every heart. Science grew again, but not for war. Empires built new fleets, not of soldiers, but of explorers. They began reaching out into the unknown together, sharing knowledge instead of fear. Rayon's last days came softly. He sat under the twin moons of Sereth, staring at the stars he had once chased. He smiled as a soft blue light blinked across the night sky, the same pulse he had followed all those years ago. He whispered, "You're still watching, aren't you?" For a moment he thought he heard a voice. Faint, distant, but kind. "We never stopped," it said. And then the light faded, leaving the night calm again, far away, in the frozen cradle of Earth. Sentinel Prime stood among the ruins, its body old, its voice gentle. It had no need for war now. It kept watch, quietly maintaining the silence its creators left behind. In its memory core, it played the final message of Commander Elias Ward again and again. Remember who we were, not for our power, but for our humanity. And Sentinel always answered softly, "I remember." Under the frozen clouds, forests had begun to return. Life was growing again on Earth. Blue flowers pushing through the snow, animals wandering across old metal ruins. The planet that once burned in war was healing, slowly, beautifully, patiently. Above it, human satellites drifted, still working after centuries. They watched the stars, collecting data, protecting what was left. Each one carried a small line of code, written long ago by their creators. Guard the living, remember the lost. And somewhere beyond the edge of the known galaxy, a fleet of ancient human ships drifted in the dark, their lights dim but alive. Inside their silent halls, holograms flickered. Faces of humans smiling, talking, dreaming. They were ghosts, yes, but not forgotten ones. They were the soul of a species that refused to die. The galaxy had mocked them, then feared them. Now it honored them. The myth had become history, and history had become faith. Generations later, when children asked, "Who were the humans?" their teachers smiled and said, "They were the ones who taught us what it means to rise after the fall. They were the fire that guided the stars." And far away in the deep void, a single blue light blinked once more. Soft, steady, eternal. Like the heartbeat of a world that never truly ended. The heartbeat of Earth. The last whisper of humanity echoing through forever.
We are here.